All right, friends. Today is going to be something special. I was going to say fun, but fun sometimes implies a lack of meaning, which it shouldn't, because fun is meaningful and important. But we have someone today who is just different. He's just different than everybody else. He's got a new book out that I think is really important, and you're going to hear all about it. And I'm going to introduce him in a way that I don't normally do. Now, Scott. Scott Grace, I'm going to tell you right now. Normally, I either give a kind of my own personal rendition of my guest, and then I ask them to say something, or I read a bio that is carefully sampled. But you uniquely have a pretty interesting way of introducing yourself on your website. So while I am not prone to reading from a screen, I would like people to hear this because I think you are just you don't fit into regular boxes or categories, and unfortunately most of us humans think in boxes and categories. So I want them to kind of feel your journey a little bit. Is that
Oh,
okay?
it's fine.
All
And you're
right.
right. I don't even like this box that I'm in right now on Zoom. It's too rectangular.
Yeah, oh wait, and I just had a suddenly great idea, and people are going to discover quickly you're someone who responds well to spontaneity. I am going to read about who you are, and then I'd like to see if you could dignify my welcome, not with a commentary,
With a dance move,
but with
Tai
a
Chi,
song. With a
a
song.
song. All right.
How about that? So
Sounds like
you got a minute to brew. We're gonna go right into this. Okay. So
okay.
check this out. On Scott Grace, and I think you should check his website out through mindfulmasculinitymovement.com. It's the best place to learn all about Scott Grace. He's an infectious, um, thoughtful, wise, talented, multifaceted teacher today. He does coaching, he writes all those things. But if you go and look up who he is, it says the 9 lives of one cool cat. Humor is always a part of who he is. Open-heartedness, open-mindedness. Life one, he talks about being an outlaw in New York City, where he talks about hustling the streets as an unlicensed street peddler, which is sort of like a bizarre thing to put out about yourself. But that is actually such a critical life experience that so many people either don't have or have and don't get to draw from and share. And then of course, this is the springboard, how he became a full-time performer. Um, and really found himself transported into a new way of life and a new way of being. Then, as a musician, with I think an obvious attraction to songs of meaning and heart awakening, um, he was opening not only for incredible authors um, like Joan Borisenko and Mark Victor Hansen and Les Brown, Judith Orloff, but really explicitly spiritual teachers like Louise Hay and Ram Dass, Bernie Siegel, who I know, Deepak Chopra. A bunch of these people are friends actually, and even Jesse Jackson. Come on, man. Marion Williamson. This is good stuff. He then identifies the third life as the traveling troubadour and traveled really not just all over North and Central America, but Europe and Africa, particularly in North Africa, Egypt. So lots of experience sharing his music around the world. And if you know anything about music, it is the international language. There's no question he's touched thousands of hearts and minds, but I'm so curious about how all these connections would have affected him. But of course, he took all these lessons, and in life four, he moved into the corporate world and became known as the boardroom bard, where he shared his wisdom for people in the work world. And the irrepressible humor, of course, kept pushing forward. Life five, stand up comedy, performing conscious comedy. Life Six, which actually, by the way, you're not even going to get to hear Scott. I'm going to spend an hour talking about him. Life Six, he did something you've got to check out online or through his video links on his webpage. He became known as the spiritual Dr. Seuss, and really, it's genius. Not only genius how he wrote and what he wrote, but if you see him perform, it's a lot of it's committed to memory. And Scott, I don't even know how you did that. And it goes on. Portrait artist, best-selling author, life coach, mentor, guide. This guy has been around the world, and he's not afraid to say he's been on the planet for more than 60 years, living in Mexico, contributing to the awakening of the world, now with a particular passion for awakening men to reconsider what it means to be masculine. And so we turn to Scott finally, and I will say, after all these lives and all these travels and all that you've learned, if you could begin with something that you'd like people to hear, to feel, to think about, what might that be?
In song?
Yeah, can you?
Absolutely.
Let's, so let's go there, and then we'll really talk.
I'd like to say something so sublime, but Jonathan, your introduction took up all the time. But that's okay. That's all right. Every moment we play in the light, and I'm gonna share from my adventures between birth and maybe dentures. There's so much life, so much love to live. And you and I are happiest when we choose to give. When a man is in for himself, he has to get depressed. But when he opens his heart to serve the world, well then, spirit does the rest.
That is so good. That is so good. Now, for the listener out there, the guitar was a little bit hard to catch, but your words were clear, 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 clear. Your voice is gorgeous. And so
Oh,
let
Jonathan, there is a little button that says for music on top, and I think it's that you have to turn it on.
oh, I'm the one. Original sound.
Original sound. Yeah.
Oh, I do know about that. I do actually have that feature. I didn't know it had to be done on my side.
I think
Well,
my
you
side too. I'll take responsibility.
well, listen, your voice was gorgeous and your song was beautiful.
Yeah.
So everyone already knows now they're in the presence of a pretty talented guy. And let's just kind of start at the end. Um, why did this what tell me about this book? Why is mindful masculinity, after all the things you've experienced, all the places you've been, all the people you've met, why is this so important to you right now to talk about?
It's a calling. It's it's a memoir as well as education, and I just find that men are playing catch up. That generally speaking, women are doing some powerful inner work, emotional work, and because of the taboo that men have been raised with feeling their feelings and uh, being vulnerable, it's like it's hard for men to move forward spiritually, emotionally, and the book is my love letter. It's my gift to men who are semi-interested, or even like when their girlfriend will pass them the book and say, Don, you better read this. This is really important. And so it's my gift. It's a legacy. Like if I die tomorrow, I'll be like, okay, this book in particular is my legacy. It's also a response to this poem that I found on Facebook. Shade Ashani wrote it. It's a poem that starts out, "Dear men, we miss you deeply. When women gather together in circles, we tell stories of how much we long for you, crave you, pray for you to rise and meet us here. We mourn your missing presence in our childhoods, in the homes we've built without you, in our beds. We hold hands and beg God to set you free from whatever keeps you from standing at our sides, right here in intimacy, in integrity, in wholeness, in freedom, the places where you are caught in dishonesty, shame, fear, addiction. We see your pain and we see your power. We miss you. We can't wait for you to come home. For the men who have, thank you so much. Please call your brothers. Start men's circles. Show them the manual. That's why I wrote the book. Tell them of what you gave up, of your brokenness and acceptance, of what it truly means to take up the mantle of protection. Please, there aren't enough fathers, resources, and leaders for men to sit at the feet of. The women have tried. We cannot do it. The restoration must come from within the masculine.
Yeah.
The feminine cannot mother grown men into wholeness. We cannot strap men to our backs and walk. We tried. We bow out, not gracefully, but in mournful acceptance nonetheless. And we will wait for you to burst free from the shackles patriarchy has placed on you. We pray, we pray, we pray for the great remembrance.
Scott, I have to tell you, you and I, we've only met briefly, although we know each other, and you speak to something that's a real passion for me as well, although I haven't stepped up to it the way you have. And what I would like to add to that, and then I have a question for you, is that I want listeners to understand fully that what you're talking about is for lack of a better word, local and global, personal and planetary. In other words, your words, your song, your book, it calls to the individual to heal their wounds, to awaken to the fullness of being human, really, not just male. But as I think you have indicated as well, but not fully yet, this is also vital to our future as a species on the planet because it is precisely the imbalance of masculinity, the narrowness and not fullness of masculinity that has really put us where we are, which both male-bodied people and female-bodied people have participated in. Now, having said that, I'm perpetually astonished by how hard it remains to get men into these conversations. I'm speaking at an event in a couple of weeks, and it's a co-ed wellness event specifically targeted to bring men in. And like no guys are going. It's filling up with women again.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, what do you think is the doorway in? Like one thing I love about your book is the memoir piece because I think men sometimes don't like being pointed to and shamed to become better, but to read another man's journey and go, "Oh wow, that guy did it differently." What do you see, especially having been in the corporate world and now contemplating this topic deeply? Where are our opportunities to engage the resistant men, the men on the edge, the men who feel
Um,
unsatisfied but don't think this is for them?
Yeah, great question. I would say in 12 step meetings, on the ground, in other words, when a business has failed, when a marriage has failed, when you get everything you want and still are depressed, These are moments where there's a light bulb, and it's like, well, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something deeper than acquiring possessions and having everything I want. And so, you can't really reach men until they reach that point.
Mm. Well, that's powerful. That's insightful too. In other words, for people listening, you may not always be able to go at it directly. So start with the wound that they feel. Start with the pain that's real for them.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm a really good crier. I'm a frequent crier, um, and you too.
Yeah, I
So
am.
so very often, I feel when I'm with men, I feel what they are suppressing, what they're not aware of, and I feel it for them, and I just show them how shameless and liberating it is to feel your feelings. And by example, and sometimes by osmosis, some men lay down their armor because they feel safe. They see me doing it.
Mm.
We do need role models, and we need role models of masculine vulnerability. There's a little bit of a difference between how men get vulnerable and Brene Brown and the, the public discourse on vulnerability.
So I have a question that I want to get to in a moment about the depth of the wounding in the masculine and male world. But first, I'd like to invite you to feel welcome, uh, to comment a little bit about what you see being done in the world of healing men today. And I don't want to plant too much in this one, but I will simply say I, in the last few decades, have been paying attention to men's movements,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to tell you, I mean, I'm not always really. I'm just be honest. I'm not always thrilled with what I see. I'm glad people are working on stuff. I think I
Mm-hmm.
see some stuff that's pretty spectacular and like, dang, wish I thought of that. I love what you're doing. But I also kind of feel like sometimes it's just like men calling it healing and then somehow not really doing the work, just kind of rehearsing what's already been stamped okay for men to do. What are you seeing out there in the landscape of opportunities for men to heal and grow? Are you encouraged? Are you concerned? What's your assessment of the
It depends
landscape?
where I'm looking. There's a big world out there, and there
Yeah.
are men who are leaving their comfort zones and expressing a lot of courage in the transformational journey. I am part of this movement called authentic relating,
Mm.
and I am amazed at the groups that I see because they often are more men than women, and they're young men.
Wow.
It just fills me with hope and inspiration. Their emotional intelligence, it's just amazing to me. Of course, there are, men's movements I disagree with. Who's that guy, Andrew Tate?
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Totally.
yeah, yeah. I think you've been described as the anti Wayne Dyer. I'm the anti Andrew Tate.
Well, I should quickly clarify that, just very quickly. When people see the video that's posted that says, I'm the anti-Wayne Dyer, you need to know it actually celebrates Wayne Dyer as a genius and me as a failed version of him. That's the anti. It's not against him. I talk about how he could remember every quote and he's always eloquent and he knows that Wordsworth said this and Longfellow said that. And I'm like, I don't know. Somebody said something about a thing and it was good, right? So that was that. But yes, you are definitely the opposite of Andrew Tate.
Yes.
But I love that you mentioned that there are good things happening and that you see a lot of young people. But that takes me to another question. In my work, I relate to a lot of women in their 40s and 50s. Um, a lot of them are single, and they're single because they're on a conscious path, and either their marriage or partnership has fallen apart because they have continued to grow and grow and grow, and their partner hasn't, or they keep waiting, as as the poem you read suggests, they keep waiting for a man who can meet them as a spiritual partner and have that language with them. What do you say to the women of a generation of men that are in between the grandfathers that would rarely be caught dead in something that you would do or I would do, and then the young guys that probably would sign up pretty easily? What do we do with this Midland group that's sort of 40s and 50s, and they know how to maybe shop at Whole Foods, and they might know they should go to a yoga class. They can do a little dabble, but I hear a lot of women, I'm generalizing, say that this group is really hard to deal with because they're
Mm.
just not doing the work and getting there.
Hmm.
What do you how do you respond to that?
uh, well, individually, like if I was with one woman who's speaking that way, I would say, well, it sounds like you're pretty committed to a scarcity consciousness
Right,
around having the right man come into your life.
right,
And I would challenge her on that, because
right.
that's a victim story. I don't support that. But I would also say, a relationship is a gift. You can do everything right and still not manifest a relationship. And there are soul lessons, there are always lessons involved, and you're always getting what you most need to grow. And for many people, especially women, the fairy tale script of my happiness is about being
Mm,
with the right person is dying. And we need that death.
yeah, yeah,
We need, all of us, we need to understand that happiness and relationship are not synonymous.
right.
You could be miserable alone, miserable in a relationship, happy alone, happy in a relationship, and that it's a spiritual thing. A relationship is a spiritual assignment. Two people getting together to help each other heal, to uplift the planet, and many of us are not ready for it. And it's for valid reasons, like because we're building self-esteem, or we're learning to trust the universe, or we're learning to let go of control, or we're learning to reparent our inner children. And a relationship would just sort of accelerate the healing process too fast. I like to see the
Ah,
universe
yeah.
as so benevolent that it knows exactly what we need in any given moment.
Oh, Scott, you're so friggin' good. That's a
Mm.
beautiful answer. That's a really important answer. And I hope that if there's and I'm just going to say it plainly, if there's a frustrated woman listening, please go back and listen to what he just said again. And for that matter, anyone, because a big part of the wisdom in what you said is that we have to be careful that we don't live according to stories of expectation rather than living in the faith of a wise and loving universe. And for me, one of the things that has come up in dialogue with women in this kind of window, but I'm interested in you to comment on this, is that yes, maybe they will find, quote, the one, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe friendship is something to lift up just as much as relationship. Maybe community is just as much something to lift up as relationship. Maybe solitude. There's so many ways of being in the world. And I wonder what you think about that.
Well, I like what you're saying. I do live in a community, and what has been revealed to me through living in community is the difference between our authentic needs and our strategies to meet those needs. So, I want a relationship. Well, that's great, but that's a strategy to meet a need. The need may be connection, companionship, love. There's always more than one way to meet an authentic universal need. And we are raised in this culture, I call it flight attendant language, where somebody says, I need you to put your seatbelt on. And so we confuse our strategies with our needs.
Hmm.
I want to be married. Well, I would say, great. Why? What need would that fulfill? Security, connection. What are you looking for?
And what about things like sex and affection?
Let's combine them. Affection and sex. How about a section? No, sex fection.
Affection. Well, I want to acknowledge that for some humans, the actual sexuality, actual sex is important. I don't think that should ever be minimized or denied. Uh, I don't know that it's certainly not equally meaningful or important to everyone. And then there's this other thing, which is affection or intimacy, which can also just be closeness and cuddling. And what I'm really trying to do is bring it to a question like, well, what about the stuff that people think or feel they need that they don't have a social concept of how to get that without a relationship. So,
Without a
so spiritual
yeah.
fulfillment, I get that. Companionship, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joy and play and travel, I get that. When my dad died, and my dad was kind of on the edge of toxic masculine. I wouldn't say he was hardcore, but that was his generation. Um, okay, guy. Um, but my mom was like, we were all like, Mom, you're not that old. She was in her early 60s, vibrant woman. Are you gonna date again? Are you gonna da da da? She's like,
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm done. I've got the best friends in the world. I can travel with my friends. I can go to my spiritual groups with my friends. She has had a rich, fulfilling life the last 20 plus years
Mm-hmm.
with seemingly no concern about that, but she was also at a mature point in her life where she could see that. So, back to you.
Mm-hmm.
What about that stuff that people in their 20s, 30s, 40s may still just really want some of because they're on planet
Yeah.
Earth? Like, what do you do?
Oh, you go on the internet and you swipe right.
Do
Um,
you really? Do you really?
I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just having some fun with the question. Sexual expression is a human need. It's an authentic need, and most people feel safest in a monogamous container. So they do want to build a relationship with someone who cares about them and not just their body. And again, it's like we're not here to get our needs met all the time and to be satisfied with our pleasures and our life just set up the way we want it. It's like it's far more important to appreciate what you have than to get what you want.
Mm.
Because
Oh,
if you don't focus on that, then you're going to get what you want or not. But if you get what you want, you're going to make that person wrong pretty quickly. You're going to feel that discontent because that discontent is divine discontent. It's your soul saying there's more that I'm
mhm.
here for.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love that. Love that. That's another one I hope people will rewind and listen to again a little bit. Now, I
I
apologize.
did write a chapter about my sex life in the book, and it's about like what is it? It's like I've been celibate for 13 years, and it's what I've learned about myself by
Yeah.
not being but I haven't been voluntarily celibate. I just haven't been with I haven't met someone that I feel drawn to.
Well, and that raises a deeper spiritual lesson that I think is also ever present in your work, which is when we embrace what one might call a cosmic perspective. That I don't even know why I picked that word. Um, life simply is, and to align ourselves with isness, um, can be powerful. What I mean by that, in light of what you just said, is that we don't need to always add a lot of storytelling. So someone might say, "Oh, but I haven't had a partner in X amount of time." And then the answer would be, "Okay, so you haven't."
Yes. What are you
Oh,
making that mean? What does
right,
that
and
mean to you?
that's where we get into the trouble. So what does
Yeah.
it mean about me? And I must be
Yeah.
this, I must be that. It's like, no, it's okay to just experience what you're experiencing and ask what it
Yeah.
teaches you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wanted to pick at something with you and get your wisdom on this. And I really welcome you to challenge this because I don't know. I don't know if I'm even thinking clearly behind the question. I have sometimes found myself having discussions, and I even was talking with my 16-year-old son about this recently, which is that for a variety of reasons, which I won't elaborate on just for brevity, women have not only suffered at the hands of masculinity and male dominance and all these things, but have also, by virtue of that, somehow largely been protected from some of the assumptions that go along with being masculine. And whether it's biological or spiritual or cultural, have retained access to the healing path, to the whole self, just like you said earlier on. We're out here attending the workshops and going to the therapists and asking ourselves how to become whole and to give to others and give to the self. I think it's often underestimated just how repressed men are. And
Indeed.
I don't know if repressed is the right word, but I'll just try to quickly summarize this and then you go. While men have had power and have been abusive, not all men, but while men or masculinity has been identified or labeled or associated with power and abuse, there has been a kind of assumption that that is a privilege. And in the discourse of race and gender, very often we talk about the power of privilege. But the problem with that approach, and I do not disagree with any of those conversations, but the problem when we use the word privilege is that the privileged one begins to lose their capacity to identify their own woundedness,
Hmm.
experience as a victim, not victim consciousness, but literally in moments of life, not seeing options. Um, and so the repression goes deeper. In other words, while men have been privileged to hold power and abuse without accountability for thousands of years, men have also been the ones that don't get asked what they want, go to war, don't get asked what they want, go to work, don't get asked what they want, take one for the team. And whether it's concussions on the NFL football field or whether it's the extraordinary rates of addiction and suicide in medical professions and among CEOs and so on,
Hmm.
um, there's been generations of suffering that have just been buried and buried and buried. My question to you, am I exaggerating this? And does that mean we're up for a bigger challenge than we think in bringing men along? Or am I missing something? Maybe it's not that bad.
Mm. Jonathan, I'm touched by your question. I have tears. It's an area that I feel very uncomfortable exploring because when we speak of men in general,
Right.
some everyone's a unique snowflake, and yet there is a male collective wounding,
Yeah.
but it's different, but it's no bigger than a feminine, what Eckhart Tolle would call the feminine pain body, the collective of the wounded feminine. And to describe the nature of how repressed it is and where it came from and whether there's hope or whatever, I I feel like let's forget about that because we are in the solution. You and I are modeling and extending solutions for men who are ready. And that's where my attention wants to go. It's like the woman throwing starfish back into the ocean after a storm. And
You're right.
somebody approaches them and says, "There's millions of these starfish. Why are you throwing one or two back? How could it matter?" And she said, "Well, and she picks one up, it mattered to this one.
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about helping men. I don't even want to evaluate how far deep in the doo doo the collective is when there's
Mm.
so many men waking up and needing help. And here we are. Here we
Mm.
are in the solution. So instead of in fact, there's a big part of the book about men having to uh, identify the problem. You know, what's the problem? And then go about fixing it in order to have an identity, in order
Right.
to have self esteem. So the question, what's the problem, to me, is the problem.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And what I also hear in what you're saying that I think is so relevant for so much of what people can do in the world for what they're passionate about is that there's just so much need for love and service. Why don't you just get to work in the ways that you can, love and serve in the ways that you can, and maybe save some of the debates and reviews of history and analysis of who's right and wrong if it's not really uplifting the cause.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sometimes I like to paraphrase so that either I understand or I think maybe someone else. However, I'm going to hang on for one more second.
You betcha.
I'm going to hang on for one more second. I think while I am very much, very much, very much understanding and fully uplifting what you're saying, I think my purpose to bring it up now that you shared that, because actually you helped me see something in myself, which is it isn't so much about, it's important not to get caught up in the past and the blame and the analysis that may serve no one. I do think there may be something valuable for those who are effectively waiting for men to get it or watching men unfold in their healing journey. I do think there's something valuable in them understanding this is no small task.
Ah,
And for the men who are doing the work, there there is a lot going on. And to your point, not necessarily more than uh, for women or female bodied people or transgendered people or uh, indigenous people. It's not a competition of who suffered more. But I think it is a way to say when men start to heal, and so I'm going to say this as my observation and proclamation, but I want your guidance. When you are involved in the work of watching men heal and being a part of men healing, be ready
yes.
because this is some deep stuff, and it
Yes.
goes to more than just our fathers and our grandfathers and the pictures of, whose grandfather was a soldier and my own dad, who went to work every day in a suit. And, whatever it wasn't 9 to 5, it was, 8 to 5 or whatever it was. And made sacrifices, I think, to his well-being and his happiness in ways that I can't even comprehend. And yet to this day, decades after his death, I know my family still benefits from his work,
Mm,
benefits from his
yes.
from his
Yes.
funding of our schooling, his
Yes.
funding of my
Yes.
mom's retirement, his right. And there's all this confusion, and yet at the same time, I also bear the legacy of um, unidentified limits and expectations. So, can you say something about your work writing this and helping men who want to wake up? Can you say something about how messy this just might get and how do
Yes.
we prepare for that?
Leave the tissues at home, women. Bring buckets. Men have so much suppressed grief
Yeah,
and shame.
yeah,
And the bravado that you see, the posturing, the competition, all of that is the cover And underneath the cover, there is some deep doo doo. And please, see, women love vulnerability, but they also want to be protected. They also want that real man, both as a stereotype and also the authentic masculine that does serve, protect, and adore the feminine. And women want to be appreciated, adored, and safe in the man's presence. So in one sense, they're a champion of vulnerability. Yes, get those tissues. Yes, you're getting in touch with your inner child. Oh, this is so good. And then the next moment, I don't feel attracted to you anymore. I can't get sex, and which is a valid experience. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with that, but I want women to step back and just see that men are in between two worlds. We are confused. We are opening up the right side of the brain, sometimes spontaneously. Sometimes people just are having these spontaneous emotional awakenings and creativity and tears and kundalini. Things are just happening. And so that's happening. And at the same time, men are deeply questioning how important it to be fierce, to be aggressive, to go to the gym, to go to war. I mean, everything's up in the air, which is great because it means that the individual gets to start his journey of developing himself outside of a culture telling him what's right, wrong, masculine, feminine. It's like, no, no, the rules don't apply anymore. This is not the 50s. I'm sorry. There's no more rules. We get to define ourselves as we go along or discover ourselves. So I would say to women, patience, please. Patience, and do your work of becoming whole so you don't need a man to be consistent because men are in transition. And this great transition requires unpredictability. And if you want a man to be predictable and consistent, it's not the right time on the planet for that.
Have you thought of running for president? So, again, I don't think you could say that better. And if I may, and the joke about presidency was sort of intentional to segue. I think, paraphrasing again, that you've said something that's so critical for this transition in gender relationships, but it's critical for the transition in the world. And someone said to me the other day something about it was a politically related comment, like what a mess. It was connecting work and politics and how it's getting harder to hire people and harder to manage people because you have this spectrum. The idea was that the spectrum is opened up. Some people only want to work at home. Some people need to go to a place. Some people want to be in the same place for 30 years. Some people want to be there only 3 years or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do this? How do we do this? Hands in the air. Oh my gosh, it's a total mess.
Mm-hmm.
And my comment was something very and pardon me, and made more confusing by political upheaval and COVID and social change and all that stuff that people talk about. But my comment was to say something like what you said, and I want to know if you think this is an appropriate application. I said, well, I think the good news is that the spectrum has now opened up, and we
Yes.
now know that we can be honest about being human, that sexuality is not binary, gender is not binary, work is not binary, politics are not binary. There's a magnificent rainbow of options within everything that people can discover themselves to be. Authenticity is going to find its place inside that, but we don't have the philosophies, the social structures, the educational system, the parenting strategies to contain this yet. It's a transitional moment. It is messy. It's going to stay messy for a while. And we have to be careful we don't let the confusion of this transitional period take over the individual work. So I'm drawing an analogy between what you just said, essentially, women, please be patient, women, please understand this is a transitional time. I think this speaks to something bigger in the world. Do you?
Absolutely. In fact, what I said about men, like being in between two worlds, so is humanity.
Yeah.
And things are gonna collapse. In my frame of reference, we need collapse. We need chaos in order to grow up and become all of who we are. And we most of us are used to living by a set of rules, whether it be religious rules or, oh, okay, get a job, go to college, marry, da da da. Like we have a script that was handed to us. And now all the scripts are being burned in the fire, like in the 70s when women burned their bras. It's like people are just throwing away the scripts and learning to improvise. And how do we get along as a collective, as a species, when everyone's improvising instead of following the rules?
Yeah.
I am excited about that kind of chaos.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It is really good. It's it can be hard to live and love with an open mind and heart during this time because we see suffering, and yet it's a part of the journey. And it brings me to the next question.
Hmm.
I feel like your last comments have implied, particularly the comment about between two worlds.
Oh, I have a song about that, by the way.
Oh, well, you're welcome to sing it.
Yep.
Um,
Okay, let's do the question first.
um, I feel like there's a nuance there that maybe not everyone picked up, or maybe I read into it, that there's something spiritual going on. And spiritual is one of those words often misunderstood or whatever, not used clearly. But I don't really care. I'm just going to say something spiritual is going on. And when I think of two worlds, I mean, excuse me, I mean that there's really something more to being human than what we see, something more to the world than what we see. Were you insinuating something like that?
Yeah, you know, I, when these two worlds, one of them is rigid, and the foundation of that world is fear, or separation from God, separation from each other, and then the other world that's being built, it has a different foundation. It's built on interdependence, connection, love, safety, security, and like, you see, it's like in the US debate that I just saw, it was like they were in different worlds. They weren't talking to each other. They were just expressing totally different worldviews.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
they were.
oil, like oil and water. That these worldviews, they are, they can't communicate together.
Someone once said, I couldn't imagine who it was, something about, see, there's my anti-Wayne Dyer. I don't remember who said it, when they said it, what it was exactly, but
That's what
approximately
Google's for.
something like the world will soon no longer be divided um, horizontally by gender, class, culture, discipline, industry, but instead vertically by consciousness.
Hmm.
And that you could be in any one of those areas of life or expressions of life. And what will define you will not be whether you're a garbage collector or a stenographer or a president. It will be your consciousness. And the tricky thing about that is with each, for lack of a better word, evolution of consciousness, there's a different language and logic and worldview, and they really do struggle to communicate to each other. In some cases, it's almost unintelligible. Now, I sense that you see that, and yet, ooh, this is a good one because you're a awfully wise man, and I want to hear this. If that feels true, let's go back to your book. Then what do we do, or maybe we have, again, for lack of better language, women or people on a progressive level of consciousness that want to reach out or, yeah, reach out to another level. I'm reluctant to say down because it's got an evaluative quality, but to reach outside their, you know, go outside their yoga class, go outside their workshop, go outside their men's retreat, and somehow communicate with someone who's maybe feeling the pain but doesn't understand the opportunity. You mentioned earlier, we'll go through the wound, the bankruptcy, the addiction. Are there other things you can say about how we build bridges?
Yes. I was sitting on an airplane for 4 hours next to this older couple that were talking, and I got that they were Trump supporters, and I happened to have a different frame of reference. Uh, but I just reached out to them. I said, "Do you guys have grandchildren?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I said, "Show me some pictures." And we got into a conversation about what we have in common. That's all. Like if your intention is to build bridges, go into their world
Yeah,
and swim around, validate it, celebrate it. So what's important to you, sir?
yeah,
Rather
right.
than I'm going to lift your consciousness or help you awaken or improve your life. Like, no, connection first. Connection before correction.
Oh, yes. Connection before
Connection
correction.
before correction, no matter who you're voting for in the election.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. That's actually a love. That's a parenting full motto as well.
Ah,
Okay, listen, we're gonna be running out of time in soon, and I don't know how abruptly you're gonna want to leave on me. I'd
not at all.
love to hear a song, but I wonder before, I guess we may close with a song, but before we get there, do we have just a little more time?
Jonathan, I have all the time in the world.
Do you now? Oh,
I
good
am.
golly. Well then, I got a few, just a few more questions.
Good.
The first one is there anything that you would like people to know about your work or where to find you or what you're doing so that we look after that side of things? Some people call it promotion, but I just think people need to know more about what you do. I would love our listeners to explore. So we've mentioned your website, which is mindfulmasculinitymovement.com, or they can just Google Scott Grace and you come up fairly easily. Are there other things you want them to look for, know about, sign up for?
No, no.
Your
Well,
YouTubes are
there,
great.
my YouTube channel is a lot of fun. There are a lot of tapping videos when I work personally with clients. I
Oh,
take them through the emotional freedom technique.
yeah, EFT.
I have a deep love of connecting one on one with people. I have regular clients, but many people just come see me once, and I could see their soul, and I could like tell them what their lessons are and where their blind spots are, and then we do some tapping, and I really am a channel. When it comes to music, I can channel a song, not just for entertainment, but to help the soul. So I would say look me up and consider getting a private session. And also, I do this thing called song portraits where I create songs for birthdays, anniversaries, memorial services, and there's plenty of examples on the website.
I
So
think
that's
I'm.
something to look into. It's such a great gift. It's so
What a
personal and
gift.
intimate. Yeah.
I want to do that, Scott. I'm going to do that. Okay. A couple other questions. What's important to you when you do interviews, when you make an appearance? Is there something that kind of burns in your heart that you feel like, well, if I'm going to say anything, I hope I get to talk about this? Or you just don't work like that?
If I'm gonna say anything, what I'd say is please let me sing. 'cause I feel so alive and free when I'm serenading in Ellerby. You may see me as an elder guy with wisdom and an open third eye. But I don't need to try, it just comes on through like the kindness in you. I would say that I get disappointed in interviews when people don't leave time for me to do a little poetry, a little comedy, a little, intuitive singing, because those are the things that make me come alive, and they seem to touch people more deeply than any conversation about any book. And
All
I
right. Well,
really,
then,
I want to touch people. I don't want to educate, inspire, food for thought. I'm not a food for thought kind of guy. I'm a food for heart.
yeah,
I
I
got to
love
go
it.
directly to that core zone.
All right. Well, then here's my last question of the
Intellectual
mind.
question? All
Yeah,
right.
and then I would love to just give you some space to
All right.
share a little, and we'll conclude with whatever the heck you want.
Okay.
And this is left field because it just doesn't, I can't find a logical connection to anything in an obvious way. But I just, I do feel like you're a kindred spirit. I just love I really do. I love your work. I love the way you experience the world. I just want to share that I feel like a part of what we are coming to terms with as humans is our relationship to time. I think time is a big factor in all this. And we don't name it. In fact, I'm going to be bold enough to just share a personal thought, and then I'll just kind of shut up and let you go from time and then into whatever you want. You look at the E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times whatever the velocity, mass times the velocity, the speed of light squared, something like that. But no one uses the word time, but speed is by definition a reference to time. So everything in the human dimension on the planet has a kind of time lesson to it. You mentioned the transitional phase, to be patient with men as they move through it. Well, that's a reference to time. And we talk about being present with people to build bridges. Well, that's a reference to time. Time, I feel, is woven into a lot of what you've shared, but it's not an explicit teaching. I wonder if you have a little reflection for people on how to evolve their relationship to time in this process of awakening.
Well, there is a mystical element to time, and that is what Einstein was hinting at, which is it's relative. It's experienced differently for each person, and your attitude absolutely affects the hands of time. I like to say the more I take my time, the more time I have to take.
Yes.
The more I savor, like I call it snail medicine in the book, the more I savor taking my time, quite ironically, the more I get shit done. I get the important things done. But it's not about production. It's about enjoying the ride along the way. And like if you're at a gourmet restaurant, you don't wolf it down. You savor each bite and chew. And it's it saddens me that we're in a culture with all these time-saving devices and technology to save time where everyone's running around frantic. And rushing is a form of fear. Rushing is a belief in scarcity. You might have a million zillion dollars, but if you're rushing, you are in poverty in your relationship with time.
Say that again. That was really
If
important.
if you are rushing from a place of anxiety, because some people rush from a joyful place, but if you're rushing from a place of limited belief in limitation, then you are in poverty in your relationship with time. You're coming from not enough in your relationship with time. And that's just a belief. Change the belief, and time will change for you. And taking your time is an act of self love, it's an act of trust. You are trusting that life has your back and wants you to relax and experience every moment. And when you do, when you show up for the moment, you, well, let's just say this is the land of mysticism and miracles, when things just happen so easily. Not because you're lucky, but because you've learned how to show up and be present. I think I
That's
don't hear
awesome.
you. Oh yeah, yeah,
Well, I was,
woohoo,
I was,
yeah.
I was containing it.
And you know what? The
Well,
spiritual Dr. Seuss has said a lot about this. And at the end of one of the performances, he says, "You're not in a hurry. You're taking it slow, 'cause the journey's as rich as the places you'll go. Where you are going, you don't need to know, 'cause the journey's as rich as the places you'll go."
on that note, would you spend a little time with us however you'd like before we go?
Oh yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your listening ears, for being willing to look at your fears, for being willing to raise your tears to the surface of a very deep ocean, to get your life and your soul in motion, for not be looking for a relationship love potion to take away the existential pain that comes from a mind that's kind of insane, not that it's your fault at all. We live in an insane asylum with 8 million inmates, and when we learn to laugh at that, woohoo! We're on the road to sanity and on the road to authentic humanity, rather than unworthiness and vanity, which have been the two extremes in this crazy dream, either arrogance or shame. There's something in between that makes life worth living. Now, let's close with that song I told you I wanted to sing about living in between two worlds, which is happening personally for a lot of men and women, and also for the systems on the earth. Governments, banks, everything's just up in the air. But this is my personal up in the air journey. I was sold a storyline. Life is rough, so get tough. Go out and take what is mine. Stay in control. Join the upper hand. Show no fear, cry no tear. Learn to be Superman. Now that story is burning, going up in smoke. Can't live it any longer, 'cause I'm being choked. In the pitch black night, I'm looking for my heart. The light may be coming, but I'm still in the dark. Moving out the old, bringing in the new, and walking through the fire between the two. Moving out the old, bringing in the new, walking through the fire between the two. What am I doing here? What are my dreams? Should I be flowing with the current or be rowing upstream? Is there an end to these cycles of pleasure and pain? Does my joy need my sorrow? Does the sun need the rain? Moving out the old, bringing in the new, walking through the fire between the two. Moving out the old, bringing in the new, walking through the fire between the two. All of these years, prisoner of my fears, I've been hiding my heart to bear it, like I've been hit in my stomach's pit, and I haven't come up for air yet. But as I take my first breath, my heart is put to the test. There's a lot of emotion to feel. Sometimes it cuts like a knife, but I'm committed to life. And I know that the blade is slicing to heal, leaving what is real. My soul is passing through the in-between, like when you know that you're dreaming, but you're still in a dream. An old caterpillar is about to die. Does it know it's becoming a butterfly? Moving out the old, bringing in the new, and walking through the fire between the two. Moving out the old, bringing in the new, and walking through the fire between the two.
Sweet Lord, I love hanging out with you, man. So we do have to say goodbye for now. For now, only for now. I want to thank everyone who's listening for listening, and I just really want to thank you, um, Scott. I I love what you do. I celebrate who you are. I hope everyone gets to know you more and better, and I know you will continue to touch hearts and minds. And thank you. Just thank you so much for your life.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. That touches me, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah,
Next time, let's start with a song and then we can dissect it and go into a conversation that's inspired by a song or a poem. I think
love
the
it.
arts are so healing, and it
Yeah,
bypasses the left brain, the need to process and understand things intellectually.
please, please.
Yay!
What a beautiful note, really, to end on.
Yes.
And I would like to invite people to take that as an invitation to them as well in their
Yes.
own life. Restore the creativity in your life.
Mm.
To move from chores to your phone to the TV and your bed. Where are you creating music? Where are you creating art? Where are you creating in whatever way you choose? Please, right? Let something come through you. We'll all be better for it. Scott, thank you again. Many blessings.
Indeed.
And hasta, hasta
Hasta
luego.
luego.
Yeah.
Sí.
All right.
Sí. Ciao, bello.
Ciao.